The smell of burnt coffee and old grease hung in the air. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps. My dog tags clinked softly under my flannel shirt. I sat at the corner booth, same as every Tuesday morning for the past 6 months. Small-town Texas had its rhythms. The waitress, Linda, knew my order without asking. Black coffee, wheat toast, scrambled eggs. Simple, quiet, the kind of life I'd built after hanging up my uniform for the last time. Or so everyone thought. That's when she walked in. Margaret Thornton, mayor's wife, town council president, the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and spoke like she owned the whole county. She spotted me immediately and made a beeline for my booth, her heels clicking against the cracked linoleum like a metronome counting down to disaster. "Well, if it isn't our little war hero," she said, sliding into the seat across from me without invitation. Her perfume was too strong, too sweet. "I hear you're looking for work again. Bob Henley down at the hardware store might have something. Filing papers, stocking shelves, you know, clerk work. Something appropriate for someone with your limitations." The words hit like shrapnel. She smiled that politician's wife smile, all teeth and no warmth. Around us, conversations died. Folks pretended to read their newspapers, but I could feel their eyes. "I appreciate the suggestion, ma'am," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady. "Military bearing. Never let them see you flinch." "Oh, don't ma'am me. We all know what you really were over there. A pencil pusher. Supply clerk, wasn't it? Nothing wrong with that, mind you. But let's not pretend you were some kind of special forces hero. This town has had enough tall tales." She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and delivered the killing blow. "Some people need to learn their place. Maybe if you stopped living in fantasies, you'd find real work. Honest work. For honest people." The diner stayed silent as she clicked her way out. Someone cleared their throat. A fork scraped against a plate. I stared at my dog tags through my shirt, feeling the weight of secrets I'd carried for 20 years. Margaret Thornton had just made the worst tactical error of her miserable life. She had no idea who she was really dealing with. But she was about to find out. The sound of helicopter rotors used to be my lullaby. Back when I was 8 years old, living near Fort Hood, watching Blackhawks practice their patterns over our little house. Mom would call me in for dinner, but I'd stand in the backyard until the last bird disappeared into the sunset. That's when I knew. Military was my calling. Enlisted at 18. Started as a 42A, human resources specialist. Yeah, I was a clerk. Margaret Thornton got that part right. But she didn't know about the night classes, the language certifications, the psychological warfare training I sought out on my own time. The way certain colonels started pulling me aside for special assignments that never appeared on my service record. 23 years of service. Most folks saw the ribbons and medals and figured I'd pushed papers in some air-conditioned office. Truth was more complicated. Much more complicated. The VA hospital in Tampa knew some of it. Dr. Rodriguez, my counselor, understood why I'd chosen this sleepy Texas town, why I needed the quiet. After everything I'd seen, everything I'd done. "You can't run forever, Marcus," she'd told me during our last session. "Those skills don't just disappear. That knowledge doesn't just vanish. Someday, something's going to pull you back in." I'd laughed it off. Told her I was done with all that. Done with the game. Done with the weight of command decisions that kept me awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I'd made the right call. But sitting in that diner, watching Margaret Thornton destroy my reputation with surgical precision, I felt something stirring. Something I'd buried deep under flannel shirts and quiet mornings. The predator. The strategist. The general who'd once commanded a joint task force that officially didn't exist. The breakfast crowd slowly filtered out. Linda refilled my coffee without making eye contact. I could feel the town's opinion shifting like sand. By noon, everyone would know. The war hero was just another fake. Another wannabe living off stolen valor. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled through my contacts until I found a number I hadn't called in 2 years. Colonel Sarah Mitchell. Pentagon. She owed me 3 favors from our time in places that weren't on any map. Time to collect. The phone rang twice before Sarah picked up. Her voice was crisp, professional. This is Mitchell. Sarah, it's Marcus. I kept my voice low, even though the diner was nearly empty. I need a favor. Silence. Then, Jesus Christ, Marcus. You disappeared. We thought you were dead. Her tone shifted. Warmer. Worried. Where the hell are you? Small town in Texas. Living quiet. But that just changed. I could hear her moving. Probably walking to a secure room. Sarah never took chances. What do you need? Deep background check. Margaret Thornton. Mayor's wife in Millfield, Texas. Financial records. Business dealings. Political connections. Everything you can find without triggering alarms. Marcus, you've been out for 2 years. Your clearance. I know what my clearance status is. And I know you still have channels. Unofficial channels. To end. Worse. To. Another pause. The sound of a door closing. This isn't about some local dispute, is it? You don't activate old networks over parking tickets. I watched Linda wipe down tables, her movements nervous. Word was already spreading. Phone calls. Text messages. The gossip network in small towns moved faster than military communications. Someone just painted a target on my back, I said. In public. With witnesses. That means they're either very stupid or very confident. I need to know which. Sarah's keyboard clicked in the background. Give me 24 hours. Secure channel protocol. 7. You remember the procedures? Like riding a bicycle. Marcus? Her voice carried a warning. Whatever you're planning, remember you're not active duty anymore. No backup, no extraction team, no official cover. I know exactly what I am, Sarah. Question is, do they? I hung up and stared out the window. Main Street looked peaceful. American flags hung from lampposts. Kids rode bikes on sidewalks. Norman Rockwell with a dark undercurrent. But I'd learned long ago that the most dangerous battlefields looked exactly like paradise. The enemy always hid behind familiar faces and friendly smiles. Margaret Thornton had just declared war. She thought she was fighting a broken-down veteran with PTSD and delusions of grandeur. She had no idea she'd just poked a sleeping dragon. One with 23 years of training. A network of contacts that spanned 3 continents. And absolutely nothing left to lose. The real question wasn't whether I could destroy her. The question was how much collateral damage I was willing to accept. Time to find out. Sarah's encrypted message came through at 0300 hours. Old habits die hard. I was already awake, sitting on my porch, listening to the night sounds of rural Texas. Crickets and distant highway traffic. The radio static of a peaceful life about to explode. The data file was extensive. Margaret Thornton wasn't just the mayor's wife. She was the power behind half the county's development deals. Shell companies. Land acquisitions. Federal grants that somehow vanished into thin air. But the real prize was buried on page 47. A connection to Blackwater Holdings. A defense contractor I knew well. Too well. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the financials. This wasn't just small-town corruption. This was treason. Arms deals to prohibited nations. Classified technology transfers. The kind of operation that would make international headlines and start congressional investigations. Margaret Thornton was a spy. And she'd just blown her own cover by attacking me in public. I smiled in the darkness. Amateur hour. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Coffee shop. 6 a.m. Come alone. The trap was set. But she didn't know I'd been setting traps since before she learned to spell espionage. I arrived at the diner 20 minutes early, parked across the street, watched the building through binoculars I'd kept from my active duty days. No unusual vehicles, no surveillance team. Either she was incredibly confident or incredibly stupid. Margaret walked in at exactly 6 a.m. Punctual, professional. She chose the same booth where she'd humiliated me yesterday. Symbolic. She wanted to finish what she'd started. I gave her 10 minutes to get comfortable. Let her think she was controlling the situation. Then I walked in, moving with the casual confidence of someone who owned the battlefield. "Mrs. Thornton," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You wanted to talk?" Her smile was predatory. "I wanted to give you a chance to leave town quietly, before things get unpleasant." "Unpleasant how?" She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "People talk, Marcus. They say you've been asking questions, making phone calls. That's not smart for someone in your position." "My position?" "A mentally unstable veteran with delusions of grandeur. One phone call to the VA, and you'll be back in a padded room. One call to the sheriff, and you'll be in jail for stalking. One call to the IRS." She shrugged. "Well, let's just say your disability benefits might disappear." I nodded thoughtfully, reached into my jacket pocket. Her hand moved instinctively toward her purse. Fast reflexes. Professional training. But I just pulled out a photograph. Surveillance shot. Margaret shaking hands with Viktor Petrov, a Russian arms dealer who'd been on our watch list for 15 years. Her face went white. "Blackwater Holdings," I said quietly. "Interesting company, especially their overseas contracts." The Predator's smile vanished completely. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. "Now," I continued, "let's discuss who really needs to leave town." Margaret recovered faster than I expected. Good training. She studied the photograph for 30 seconds, then slid it back across the table. Her smile returned, colder this time. "Photoshop is amazing these days," she said. "Anyone can make fake pictures, spread false rumors. But I have something better than doctored photos." She pulled out her own phone, showed me a video, surveillance footage from last night. Me, sitting on my porch, talking on a secure phone. The image quality was excellent, professional grade. "You made calls to Pentagon personnel using unauthorized channels. That's a federal crime, Marcus. Especially for someone whose security clearance was revoked 2 years ago." My blood turned to ice. She was right. One phone call to Sarah could land me in federal prison. But the bigger problem was the surveillance. Someone had been watching me since I arrived in Millfield. This operation went deeper than I'd realized. "Here's what's going to happen," Margaret continued. "You're going to drive to the sheriff's office. Turn yourself in for stalking and harassment. Plead guilty. Do your 30 days. Then you're going to disappear. Forever." The diner door chimed. Linda walked over with coffee, but someone else caught my attention. A man in a worn denim jacket, sitting at the counter, mid-50s, gray beard. Something familiar about his posture. "And if I refuse?" I asked Margaret. "Then the video goes to the FBI. Your friend Colonel Mitchell gets investigated. Your VA benefits disappear, and you spend the next 10 years in federal prison." The man at the counter turned slightly. I saw his profile and nearly choked on my coffee. Jimmy Kowalski, Staff Sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment. We'd served together in Afghanistan. He'd been my communications specialist during those missions that didn't officially exist. He caught my eye in the reflection of the window, gave the slightest nod, then went back to his eggs and bacon like nothing had happened. Margaret was still talking about consequences and federal charges, but I wasn't listening anymore. Jimmy's presence changed everything. You don't just run into former special operations personnel by accident, especially not in small-town Texas diners. Someone had sent backup. Mrs. Thornton, I interrupted. You've made one critical error. Which is? You assumed I was working alone. Her confidence flickered. Just for a second. But in that second, I saw fear. Jimmy stood up, left money on the counter, and walked out. As he passed our table, he dropped a newspaper. The sports section landed near my feet. I could see writing in the margin. Grid coordinates. Margaret tried to regain control. I don't know what game you think you're playing. No game. I stood up, leaving the newspaper on the floor. War. Outside, a helicopter appeared on the horizon. Black. Military. Moving fast toward town. Margaret's phone rang. She answered it, her voice sharp. What? No, that's impossible. We have clearance for. Her face went pale. Since when? The helicopter was closer now. I could hear the rotors. That familiar sound that used to be my lullaby. The sound of cavalry coming over the hill. You might want to take that call outside, I suggested. Margaret Thornton had just learned the first rule of warfare. Never start a fight you can't finish. The helicopter landed in the high school football field. Black and unmarked. The kind that didn't appear on flight plans. The sound of rotors filled the air like approaching thunder. Every person in Millfield was watching now. Phones out. Recording everything. I walked toward the field, Margaret close behind. She was making frantic phone calls, but her contacts weren't answering. Bad sign. When your handlers go dark, you're already dead. Jimmy waited at the fence line. He handed me a tactical vest without a word. Military grade. Recent issue. Someone with serious pull had authorized this operation. How many? I asked. Full team. 12 operators, FBI task force on standby. Media blackout is already in place. Jimmy's voice was steady, professional. Orders came from very high up, sir. Sir. He was acknowledging my real rank. The rank that officially didn't exist on any public record. Margaret finally understood. She stopped walking, stopped making calls, just stood there, staring at the helicopter like it was a UFO. You're not just a clerk, she whispered. No, ma'am. I'm not. The helicopter's cargo door opened. Armed personnel in tactical gear. Federal badges. Military precision. They moved like a machine, securing the perimeter, establishing communications, turning a high school football field into a forward operating base. A woman in a business suit emerged. FBI special agent. She walked directly to Margaret, holding up credentials and what looked like a very thick warrant. Margaret Thornton, you're under arrest for espionage, treason, and conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism against the United States. Margaret looked at me one last time. Her face was a mask of pure hatred. You have no idea what you've just started, she said. This goes deeper than you know. Deeper than you can handle. Maybe, I replied. But I had good teachers. The FBI agent cuffed Margaret and led her toward the helicopter. As they walked past me, Margaret hissed. This isn't over. Yes, it is. But even as I said it, I felt the familiar weight settling on my chest. The weight of command decisions. The weight of knowledge that meant I could never really retire. Never really find peace. I reached under my shirt and touched my dog tags. The metal was warm from body heat. Solid. Real. They'd been with me through everything. Afghanistan. Iraq. Black sites in countries that didn't officially exist. Now this. Jimmy appeared beside me. Orders, sir? I watched the helicopter lift off with Margaret inside. The FBI would break her within 48 hours. She'd give up names, locations, bank accounts. The whole network would unravel. But she was right about one thing. This was bigger than small-town corruption. Much bigger. Get me a secure line to the Pentagon, I said. Tell them General Marcus Thompson is back. The words felt strange. Official. Like putting on a uniform I'd thought I'd never wear again. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Classified number. Voice I recognized. Marcus? This is General Harrison. We need to talk. The quiet life was over. The dragon was awake. And the real war was just beginning. The FBI safe house was a converted ranch outside Austin. 24 hours after Margaret's arrest, the interrogation had yielded a treasure trove of intelligence. Jimmy briefed me in a windowless room that smelled of burnt coffee and government efficiency. The network spans 15 states, he said, spreading classified documents across the table. Defense contractors, political figures, foreign assets. Margaret Thornton was middle management at best. I studied the organizational chart, names I recognized, companies I'd investigated during my active years. A few surprises that made my stomach turn. Here's the interesting part, Jimmy continued. Your little coffee shop confrontation triggered a panic. They thought you were running some kind of deep cover operation. Started activating emergency protocols, burning evidence, eliminating witnesses. How many witnesses? 3 confirmed dead. 2 missing. All in the past 36 hours. The weight settled heavier on my chest. People were dying because I'd decided to push back against a small-town bully. The butterfly effect of classified operations. One decision ripples outward until it drowns everything in blood. My secure phone buzzed. Text message with grid coordinates and a time. 1,800 hours. Meeting location was 20 miles north. Abandoned airstrip I knew from my active days. Sir? Jimmy was watching me carefully. What are your orders? I looked at the intelligence reports. At the photographs of dead assets. At the complex web of treason that stretched from a Texas diner to the Pentagon itself. We end this, I said. All of it. The airstrip looked exactly like it had 5 years ago. Cracked concrete. Abandoned hangars. The kind of place where officially sanctioned operations became officially non-existent. 3 black SUVs waited in the twilight. Government plates. Tactical teams in the shadows. Someone had mobilized serious resources. General Patricia Harrison emerged from the lead vehicle. 2 stars. Joint Chiefs. We'd worked together on operations that never appeared in any after-action reports. Marcus. She didn't offer her hand. This wasn't a social call. General, you've stirred up a nest of vipers. My vipers. People I've worked with for 20 years. I studied her face in the dying light. Patricia Harrison was a soldier's soldier. Honorable to the core. But she was also a pragmatist. Someone who understood that sometimes good people had to make terrible choices. How deep does it go? I asked. Deep enough to start wars. Or end them. She handed me a tablet. More intelligence. More names. More connections that made the Margaret Thornton operation look like amateur hour. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I scrolled through the data. Defense contracts worth billions. Weapon sales to countries we were officially sanctioning. Technology transfers that violated every treaty we'd ever signed. A shadow government operating inside the actual government. You could walk away, Patricia continued. Go back to your quiet life. Let us handle the cleanup internally. Court-martials. Closed hearings. Justice served behind classified doors. And if I don't walk away, then you put that uniform back on. Take command of a joint task force that doesn't officially exist. Hunt down every asset, every contact, every bank account. Burn the whole network to the ground. She paused, studying my face. But once you're back in forever. No more retirement. No more peace. No more pretending you're just a clerk from Texas. The wind picked up across the airstrip. I could hear helicopters in the distance. More assets mobilizing. More resources being deployed for an operation that would reshape American intelligence operations for the next decade. I thought about my porch. About quiet mornings and truck stop coffee. About the life I'd built in the shadows of my classified past. Then I thought about the dead witnesses. About Margaret Thornton's smile. About enemies of the state. operating with impunity, while good soldiers died protecting secrets that served no one. When do I start? The Pentagon briefing room was exactly as I remembered. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look dead. Coffee that could strip paint. The sound of encrypted phones buzzing like electronic insects. 48 hours after the airstrip meeting, I sat at a conference table, wearing a uniform I'd thought I'd never touch again. General stars on my shoulders. Command authority in my voice. Gend. 23 years of training clicking back into place like a well-oiled machine. The assembled intelligence team represented every major agency. FBI, CIA, NSA, military intelligence. People I'd worked with. People I'd trusted. Some of them were about to discover their colleagues were traitors. Operation Nightfall begins now. I announced. Activating the classified briefing system. Primary objective. Complete dismantlement of the Thornton network and all associated assets. The first slide showed Margaret Thornton's organizational chart. Names. Faces. Connections. A spider web of treason that reached into every level of government. Secondary objective. Recovery of stolen classified technology and prevention of further transfers to hostile nations. More slides. Weapon systems. Encryption protocols. Satellite tracking algorithms. Enough stolen intelligence to start or prevent a dozen wars. Tertiary objective. Neutralization of all network assets, with extreme prejudice, authorized for Level Alpha threats. The room went silent. Level Alpha meant shoot-to-kill orders. No negotiations. No surrender. Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI raised her hand. General, some of these targets are American citizens, elected officials, military officers, traitors. I corrected. Nationality becomes irrelevant when you're selling state secrets to enemy nations. I clicked to the next slide. Financial records. Bank accounts in 15 countries. Enough money to fund small armies. Asset seizure begins simultaneously across all targets. No advance warning. No opportunity for evidence. Destruction. Colonel David Martinez from Army Intelligence looked uncomfortable. Sir, this scope of operation, it's unprecedented. The political implications are not our concern. I stared at him until he looked away. Our concern is national security. Everything else is secondary. The briefing continued for 2 hours. Tactical assignments. Rules of engagement. Media suppression protocols. By the time we finished, every person in that room understood they were part of something that would either save the country or destroy their careers. As the team filed out, Patricia Harrison approached me. You sure about this, Marcus? Once this starts, there's no stopping it. No middle ground. I thought about Margaret Thornton's smile, about her confidence that she could destroy a broken-down veteran with impunity, about the dead witnesses and the stolen secrets and the enemies of the state who thought they were untouchable. I've been sure since the moment she called me just a clerk, I said. Patricia nodded. The president has been briefed. You have complete operational authority. Whatever resources you need. I need Margaret Thornton transferred to a military facility. High security. I want to have a conversation with her. Done. I looked out the window at Washington, D.C. lights twinkling in the darkness. Democracy going about its business, unaware that its guardians were about to wage war against its enemies. General? Patricia was still waiting. The network made one critical error. I said. They assumed I was retired. Neutralized. No longer a threat. And now? I smiled for the first time in days. Not a pleasant smile. The kind of smile that had once terrified enemy combatants in places that didn't appear on any map. Now they're about to learn why I was never supposed to exist in the first place. The arrests began at 0300 hours Eastern Standard Time. Coordinated strikes across 15 states. FBI SWAT teams. Military police. U.S. Marshals. Every asset moved simultaneously to prevent communication between targets. I watched from the Pentagon's Joint Operations Center. Wall-mounted screens showed real-time footage from each location. Code names scrolled across displays like credits from an action movie. Raven 7. Congressman arrested at his Virginia estate. Blackbird 3. Defense contractor seized at Reagan National Airport. Falcon 9. Military attaché detained at the embassy. In Prague. Each arrest was surgical. Professional. No casualties. No escapes. The kind of operation that looked effortless but required months of planning and split-second timing. Margaret Thornton's transfer had been completed 12 hours earlier. She was now in a military detention facility in Quantico, awaiting what would be either the most important interrogation of her life or the last conversation she'd ever have as a free woman. General Thompson? Colonel Martinez approached with a secure tablet. Final asset seizure reports. I scrolled through the numbers. Bank accounts frozen. Property seized. Investment portfolios confiscated. Nearly $4 billion removed from enemy hands in a single coordinated action. And the technology transfers? Stopped. All shipments intercepted. Foreign contacts have been notified through diplomatic channels that their operations are compromised. The screens showed the final arrests. A Pentagon staff officer led away in handcuffs. A State Department analyst caught at Dulles Airport with classified documents. A Navy admiral who'd been selling submarine specifications for 15 years. Each face was someone I'd served with, trusted, shared meals with in forward operating bases around the world. The betrayal cut deeper than enemy fire ever had. Sir? Jimmy appeared beside me. Margaret Thornton is requesting to speak with you. What's her offer? Complete cooperation. Names, dates, financial records, operational details. Everything in exchange for life imprisonment instead of execution. I studied the master display showing the network's complete destruction. 97 arrests. $4 billion in seized assets. 15 foreign intelligence operations crippled. The largest counterintelligence success in U.S. history. But it had started with a cup of coffee and a woman who thought she could humiliate a broken-down veteran with impunity. Schedule the interview, I said. I want to see her face when she realizes what she really did. 2 hours later, I sat across from Margaret Thornton in a windowless interrogation room. She looked older, smaller. The predator's confidence had been replaced by desperate calculation. You want to make a deal, I said. It wasn't a question. I want to live. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. I can give you everything. Financial networks, foreign contacts, operational timelines, names you don't even know you need. In exchange for? Life imprisonment, maximum security, solitary confinement if necessary, but not execution. Life. I leaned back in my chair, studied her face. The woman who destroyed my quiet life, because she enjoyed the power of public humiliation. You made one mistake, Margaret. Which was? You assumed I was nobody. Just another broken veteran you could push around for entertainment. I smiled. That coffee shop confrontation? It wasn't personal. It was professional. You were identifying and neutralizing a perceived threat. Her face went pale. You knew. From the beginning, you knew. I suspected. Your tactics were too sophisticated for small-town corruption. Too precise. Too professional. I leaned forward. You were testing me, seeing if I was active, retired, or compromised. When I didn't react the way a civilian would, you escalated. But how did you? 23 years of counterintelligence, Margaret. You learned to recognize the signs. The room fell silent except for the hum of ventilation systems and electronic surveillance equipment. Your deal is rejected, I said finally. But I gave you everything. Number. You gave us everything you thought we needed. But we already had most of it. I stood up. The arrest operation wasn't about what you could tell us. It was about what you couldn't prevent. Then why? Because you called me just a clerk. And I wanted you to understand exactly who you were really dealing with. I walked to the door, then paused. Margaret, for what it's worth, you were right about one thing. I was broken. PTSD, survivor's guilt, the whole package. I came to Millfield, looking for peace. I turned back to face her one last time. But you reminded me that some of us don't get to retire. Some of us are soldiers until the day we die. Thank you for that. The door closed behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. 6 months later, I sat on the same porch in Millfield, watching the sunrise paint the Texas sky in shades of gold and amber. The dog tags hung heavy under my civilian shirt, the weight of 23 years of service, of classified missions, of choices made in darkness to protect people who would never know their names. The town had changed. Margaret Thornton's arrest had made national news, though the full scope of Operation Nightfall remained classified. Federal investigators had descended like locusts, examining every development deal, every land acquisition, every dollar that had flowed through Millfield's economic bloodstream. Mayor Thornton had resigned in disgrace. Half the town council was under indictment. But the hardware store still opened every morning. The diner still served truck stop coffee. Life found a way to continue. Linda brought me my usual breakfast without being asked. She'd stopped avoiding eye contact after the 3rd week. Word had gotten around that I wasn't exactly who they'd thought I was. Not the specifics, but enough. Thank you, Linda. She smiled. A real smile this time. You're welcome, General. I didn't correct her. The title had leaked somehow, despite all the classification protocols. Small towns had their own intelligence networks, and military honors were respected here, even when they couldn't be fully understood. My phone buzzed. Text message from Dr. Rodriguez at the Tampa VA. How are you holding up? I typed back, finding my balance. She'd been right, of course. You can't run forever from what you are. The skills don't disappear. The knowledge doesn't vanish. Someday, something pulls you back in. But maybe that wasn't the lesson. Maybe the lesson was that some battles choose you, whether you want them or not. And when they do, you can either fight with honor or surrender with regret. A helicopter appeared on the horizon. Small civilian model. Not military. But the sound still triggered memories. Good memories now, instead of nightmares. The cavalry coming over the hill. Backup arriving when all seemed lost. The sound of duty calling. The helicopter passed overhead and disappeared toward the county seat. Probably medical transport. Life and death, continuing their eternal dance, while the rest of us figured out how to find meaning in the space between. I reached under my shirt and touched my dog tags. The metal was warm from morning sun and body heat. Marcus Thompson. Blood type O positive. Protestant. The official record of a man who'd officially never existed. But existence wasn't about official records. It was about choices made when no one was watching. About standing up to bullies even when you wanted to be left alone. About remembering that some people wear uniforms their entire lives, even when the uniform is invisible. The sunrise was complete now. Full daylight over small-town Texas. American flags hanging from lampposts. Kids getting ready for school. Democracy going about its business, protected by guardians it would never fully know or understand. I finished my coffee and left money on the table. Linda waved from behind the counter. A few other customers nodded respectfully. Small gestures of recognition from people who understood that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Walking home, I passed the high school football field where the helicopter had landed 6 months ago. The grass had grown back. The scorch marks had faded. But sometimes, if you knew what to look for, you could still see traces of the day when dragons woke up and flew into battle. My porch was waiting, coffee pot ready for the afternoon ritual. Books to read, quiet to appreciate, peace to protect. Because that's what soldiers do. Active or retired. Official or classified. We stand guard. We watch the horizon. We remember that freedom isn't free, and peace isn't guaranteed. And sometimes the most important battles are fought by people who prefer to remain unknown. The dog tags clinked softly as I settled into my chair. 23 years of service. A lifetime of secrets. A future full of possibilities. And somewhere in Washington, a phone was ringing with another mission, another crisis, another chance to serve. But for now, in this moment, on this porch, in this town, all was quiet. All was well. The general was home.